Thank you very much, Kavya, and thanks so much for the invitation to be part of the ETSDG Summit and this year's theme on ESGs to SDGs, Connected Paths for a Better Future. What good timing and an appropriate theme for this year. We need to get on track after the terrible dislocations of COVID-19 and all of the upheavals. We need to get on track to the sustainable, prosperous world that we're aiming to build. And to do that, we need leadership by all parts of society, by the business community, by the investors, by government, by civil society. And I come to you as a part of academia, trying to look and understand and make recommendations about how we can achieve the goals that we have set. We have set two major goals that are globally agreed, universally subscribed to, and unfortunately significantly off track. One goal is climate safety. We agreed already 29 years ago in the Rio Earth Summit on the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. It took then a long time from there, 23 years, to reach an agreement about how to implement that Framework Convention, and that is the Paris Climate Agreement that was set in December 2015. The other major set of goals that we globally agreed are the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, which are commitments for a better world and better national societies and economies by the year 2030, to end poverty, to end hunger, to ensure universal health coverage, to ensure universal education, and many other goals this decade. That's why UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres calls the 2020s the decade of action, because we're way behind and we need to accelerate on the Sustainable Development Goals. So our theme is, how do we really reach the goals that we have set? The goals are good. The Paris Climate Agreement says stay below 1.5 degrees Celsius warming on the planet, lest we have disastrous runaway climate change. The SDGs say end poverty in a manner consistent with environmental sustainability, lest we have chaos, unfairness, ungovernable societies, and inability to address our challenges because of deep social divisions. So the goals are crucial. The question is how to achieve them. Let me focus, though all of these are crucial, let me focus for a few minutes on the climate agenda. And let me start with a very obvious point, or should be obvious point, and that is India's incredibly high stakes in a safe climate. India is, without question, one of the parts of the world most endangered by global change. We need India's voice, loud and clear, saying to the whole world, stop the madness, because we are already at a point of maximum danger. You know, there's a bestseller in the United States and Europe. I don't know whether it has come to India, but a bestseller about climate disaster in the future, called The Ministry of the Future, by a major science fiction writer in the United States, Kim Stanley Robinson, and it went to the bestsellers list. And it's a very interesting novel. But I'll tell you something quite striking. The disaster that unfolds because we have failed to control climate change in that novel is in India, because India in the novel suffers a catastrophic disaster because of the ongoing climate change. We don't want this to happen. We need to stop the global warming. That is a worldwide challenge. It's also a challenge for India, because as one of the most important countries in the world, and the country that will be the most populous country in the world in the coming decades, we absolutely need India's leadership for solutions as well. So what do we know about what needs to be done? We had two really important reports recently at the international level. One was the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC Working Group 1 report. I would encourage everybody to just get online and download it, at least the summary statement, because the Working Group 1 is the science of climate change. This report explains very well, my God, we're already 1.2 degrees Celsius warmer than in the pre-industrial Earth. We are warmer than at any decade of the last 10,000 years. We are warmer than in any century-long period of the last 100,000 years. We're warming at a rate more than 0.2 degrees Celsius per decade right now. We're going to reach that 1.5 degrees Celsius limit that was set in Paris, even in a decade, if we're unlucky. So that is how close to disaster we are. And we see it everywhere in the world this year. Not only heat waves, but mega forest fires, mega storms. We just had a hurricane come through New York. Many people died in New York City of flooding. We have droughts in many places in the world. It's bad. So that's one of the reports that was recently issued. The other, equally important, is a report by the International Energy Agency called Net Zero by 2050. IEA produced a pathway analysis showing we can get the world to net zero emissions from today's roughly 40 billion tons of emissions. We can get to net zero by mid-century. And the pathway that the IEA sets out is, from what I know from multiple studies, including ones that I've been involved in, but studies from all over the world, a basically agreed pathway. Electrification of the economy to the maximum extent possible, especially for transport and for heating and cooling and for lots of industrial processes. Zero carbon energy, zero carbon power. Your wind power, your hydropower, your solar power, especially because India's got lots of that. But getting zero carbon electricity, electrification of transport and the other sectors, and for some hard to electrify sectors, probably green fuel carriers, for instance, hydrogen, and possibly, at least to some extent, some advanced biofuels, but probably just a small amount. That's the basic pathway, combined with energy efficiency, so we're not wasting the scarce renewable energy resources that we have or incurring extra costs. In order to have that efficiency, we need our systems to be smart systems, a 5G, and it'll be 6 and 7G, digital society. We need all parts of society to be online. We need grids to be smart because they're going to be incorporating clean energy from thousands or even millions of individual producers of solar panels on buildings, for example, and mini grids and microgrids integrated into a national system. And we need smart strategies for transport, for urban life, so that we're not relying on individually owned automobiles, which is ghastly and expensive, but rather much more efficiency of public transport, car sharing and vehicle sharing, and other efficient ways to move people. So the first point is, we know we need to decarbonize. We have a basic pathway to decarbonize, and now it's up to every major part of the world to do this. Now, for some countries, this is a huge challenge, no doubt, because for the Gulf countries in the Middle East, for Russia, for Venezuela, this is an enormous problem, because these are countries whose economies basically depend on their fossil fuel exports. Their budgets depend on their fossil fuel exports, and they're going to have to find a different vocation. Many of them, like the countries in the Gulf, have massive solar potential. Obviously, they're desert economies, and they need to make that change. Then there are a large number of countries. I'd put India in this category. I'd put the United States in this category, Canada, Australia, countries that have fossil fuels. India has coal. It doesn't have much gas and oil. The United States, in its typical lucky way, if I could put lucky in quotation marks, has coal, oil, and gas, and so forth. And in our countries, fossil fuels are not such an important part of our economy, our labor force, our budgets, that would impede the transformation, but they're a pretty important part of our politics. And so in the United States, we've been held back by crazy politics. Of course, the US is a very corrupt country. A lot of money changes hands. Companies pay for the election campaigns of Congress, and then expect congressmen to vote for anti-environmental actions to protect the fossil fuel industry. Well, this is fairly familiar, I would say, in many places in the world. And India is held back because it's got a coal mining industry. Australia wants to promote its coal industry. The United States is politically divided because oil, gas, and coal has been probably the most powerful lobby in the United States for decades, and they still pay a lot of money to senators and congressmen for these campaigns. And so we just see political corruption rather than real progress in our countries. And some big names like ExxonMobil and Chevron are just very bad behaviors in all of this. But let me say that even with those difficult politics, two things are important. Governments first should take the lead to identify the path to get to zero. In India, this is going to be a solar path. Certainly, that's the major renewable energy resource. India is blessed with a lot of sunshine. It's also blessed, of course, with some wind power. It's blessed with a lot of hydro potential. It needs to put together the package, and the government has the responsibility to say, this is our path to getting to zero. And fortunately, India also has major companies that can roll out the 5G, that can roll out the smart grids, that can put together the smart systems, that can manufacture the electric vehicles, and so forth, to really make this system work. So that's part of the story. The other part of the story is then addressing the politics of the regions that absolutely can't go on doing what they're doing right now, because coal really needs to be phased out. And instead of a kind of head in the sand politics, we don't want to talk about it, it's not our responsibility, and so forth, what we need is straight on policies for a fair transition, for compensation of those places that are going to face relative decline. But we should acknowledge, in our vast economies, there's going to be a lot more jobs created in the green economy than in the brown and polluting economy. Now, one final point that I think is crucial. I think India should be raising its voice to the rafters globally. Stop this before you kill us. Stop this before we destroy the planet. And I want to hear India's voice loud and clear because of India's vulnerability, because you're already reaching days of 45 degrees C, even 50 degrees C has been recorded. So please tell the world what this means and how we have to stop this. But the second thing is India can be a leading voice for financial justice in paying for this transformation, because the historical responsibility lies with Europe and with the United States and with other rich fossil fuel using economies that put these greenhouse gases into the atmosphere in the first place. And now the developing countries have to adjust with everybody else to shocks that were caused from outside. And for that, we need justice. So we need a pathway. We need to carry it out. We need the domestic policies and politics, but we also need global justice. And that means financing on fair and generous terms to enable developing countries to carry out this responsibility without breaking the back of the budget or the economy or weighing on people who are poor and can't bear extra costs right now. And that is a responsibility of the rich countries. And I would say two main responsibilities, if I may. One is the responsibility to help finance the energy system transformation and the other adaptive spending that needs to be done so that India and other countries can keep resilient in the face of what will be warming temperatures still in the decades ahead. And then a second category is what's called losses and damages, which says we're facing disasters. We need to face them now. People need relief. They need rebuilding in the case of floods or storms. They need help to recover farmlands and survival in the face of droughts and so forth. And for that, we face current losses and damages that need compensation. And this is a second area where the rich countries have a responsibility to the rest of the world. Now, just to close, all of these financial issues have not been solved because the rich countries say, okay, some of them, we've got to do these changes, but don't look to us. And that is completely untenable. This is a system, it's a one world, and we need one world shared response. Shared goals, shared framework, shared plans, and shared financing. And I would encourage India's leaders to put all of that firmly on the table right now. Yes, of course, we're going to decarbonize. Yes, this is our plan. Yes, we're going to get to zero by 2050. And yes, you're going to help pay for it. And I think in the coming months, we can make a breakthrough because COVID-19 has been quite a stark crisis. It is exemplary of how imbalanced the world is. It requires a response of more coherent and fair multilateralism. And I would like to see us work very diligently in the coming months for this kind of justice in financing, use the G20 process where India has a major voice and where neighboring Indonesia will host the G20 in 2022, followed by India hosting the G20 in 2023. So an opportunity for global leadership to help build a fair system, to help build the future that we need and the future that we want. Well, let me thank you again for the chance to share a few remarks with you on this important ESGs to SDGs summit. Business has a huge role to play within a framework set by global agreements and national policies. And India's got strong companies that I know can carry India to a safe, green, clean, prosperous future. And putting India's voice at the global stage for justice, fairness, and action will make a huge contribution for the whole world. Thank you so much for having me today.